Studio 397's Easter Bunny brought us a gift and we're checking it, the Formula E Generation 2 cars, right here, right now. Greetings petrolheads and welcome to romrom.net, the channel bringing you the joy of sim racing. This is a special edition of It's a Mod World. I had not planned to do this video because I was not expecting this content to appear at this point of time. Studio 397 told nobody that they were going to release it, but here we have it. As you can see, I'm sitting in a Formula E Generation 2 vehicle. If you have been following this channel for a while, you know that I am a fan of the Formula E. I have been since the first season. And in the last season they moved to a new design, put new rules in place, but all these I'm gonna tell you while I'm driving and reviewing these DLC. Okay, for rFactor 2 it's never really a DLC, but you know what I mean. It costs €5 or $. Let's see if it's worth it. The seemingly aerodynamic parts in a Formula E car are mostly for decoration to make the car look cool, but who knows what will happen in the future. Formula E is rapidly evolving with every season, so maybe at some point we will get aero. These cars are not easy to handle. In spite of their look, they have no aerodynamic downforce or a very low aerodynamic downforce, and the tires are not specially sticky, so you have to drive them more like normal car on steroids than like a Formula 1 car. Together with this DLC, Studio 397 have released Leicester in a special version for Formula E, but as we have such great modders in Errol Prefett and Garrett Gibson who have been producing and releasing into rFactor 2 workshop a whole bunch of E-Pre, as the tracks are called, I figured why go with the imaginary Leicester track? Why not go with the track where the last E-Pre took place, and that would be Rome. I have to say, the feeling and the sound when you go over the curbs is completely Formula E. If you see how these drivers go over the curbs, the noises the curbs and the cars make when it happens, and the fact that often enough, if a driver is not careful, he breaks the suspension of the cars because of a curb, it feels very much realistic. I know a lot of people don't like the sound of the Formula E vehicles, but I like it. Of course, I've always been a fan of electric mobility and I have never had problems with the way the cars sound. I don't need the roar to be able to enjoy driving a car. I understand that the roar is part of the enjoyment in many cars, but I don't need it. While learning the track and the vehicle at the same time is not the best of ideas, I am doing it so that I can drive the Formula E Gen 2 vehicle in a track that it's meant for it, as I think Leicester is way too easy compared to the tracks that are normally used in Formula E. The track looks a little bit low on detail, a little bit plasticky, but Errol Prefett and Garrett Gibson have made it clear that they want to make us able to race on all E-Pre tracks, and after they've released all E-Pre tracks, they're gonna go and refine the details, so it's acceptable. They have made clear what their strategy is. I might have taken another strategy, but it's their track, it's their work, they are allowed to use their own strategy, man. While I don't expect the Formula E on rFactor 2 to have the fan boost, what would it be based on? There are no votes. I would have expected it to have the attack mode. The attack mode is a special thing for Formula E where drivers have normally to leave the racing line, go through a specially marked part of the track, and then they have 25 kilowatt more of power that they can use for about 3 minutes and so be able to overtake other drivers. But Studio 397 are continuously updating rFactor 2 and they are continuously updating the Formula E DLC, so maybe we'll see that in the next future. There's things missing from these vehicles, like being able to set up the regeneration in braking during driving. Formula E cars have a brake-by-wire system. When you brake, the computer decides how much is done through the motor that then acts as a dynamo and regenerates power into the battery, and how much is really braking. This is not something that I see in this vehicle. You gotta be very careful on the braking, because if not, you block the tires quite easily. I'm not quite sure how to use the gears, because you don't use them in Formula E the way that you use them in the other kind of cars, and I confess I may not have paid as much attention as I thought I paid to the way that the Formula E drivers use them, but I'll have to learn and train and learn and train. If you've missed this Formula E season, you have missed a lot, because it's a very, very interesting season, even more interesting than the seasons before that, and enormously interesting compared to the snooze fest that at the moment is Formula 1. China. Do I need to say more? We are 7 races into a Formula E season that will see 13 of them, and at every race there has been another winner. And yes, it's that contented and that interesting. In the seasons before this, the Formula E pilots had to change car in the middle of the race, I kid you not, because the battery would not last enough. But with the beginning of this season, the battery is planned to last the whole race, and if it doesn't, well, that brings another interesting point, and we have already seen expected winners that did not take care of their energy management lose in the last laps. If you don't like street tracks, don't get into Formula E. It's like racing in Monaco every week. Braking here with those bumps on the track is quite difficult, but is exactly the way that the Rome Prix is. You should see how difficult it is for these very professional drivers to find the right braking point. Step by step, Formula E is giving the teams more freedom to decide what to do with the cars. At the beginning, everything was standard. Nowadays, parts like the chassis, the tires and the batteries are standard, while the powertrain and the gearing are left to each and every team. As far as I know, there are teams that are using 5 gears, but normally the standard has become to use 2 gears within Formula E. All Formula E E-Prix take place at cities, at city tracks, especially built for Formula E. It's made in part to make it different than other racing series, and in part so that you cannot compare to, for example, Formula 1, as these cars are not as fast as Formula 1 cars. The more I drive this Gen 2 Formula E car on this track, the more respect I develop for the pilots of Formula E. The car can be very much a prima donna, difficult to drive and difficult to keep on track, and the track can be scaringly narrow. This is racing for men and women with hair on their chest. Unluckily, since the first season of Formula E there have been no women driving these cars. Hopefully the Formula W that is part of the DTM will change that, and we will see more and more women driving these beasts. Let them learn the ropes in the, I think it's called W series, and then put them in a Formula 1, Formula E, DTM, whatever car. Whoop, that's a tire. Why did he go into pits? A word to the wise: if you wanna use this DLC in all its glory with all the liveries, opt out of any beta programs and use the absolutely normal rFactor 2 software. As you can see in the cockpit views, I had no liveries nor had the others because I was driving a beta version. For the replays you can see all liveries because I did opt out of beta so that I could offer you nicer views than just white cars. Let's go to the notes. The look. I think the car looks good, it helps in the immersion, and you are inside of one of these Formula E cars, so for the look I give it 5 eyes out of 5. The sound. Yeah, we could discuss if the sound of the Formula E is the right sound or not, if it sounds like a racing car. I like the sound, but that's a discussion on another place for another time. I'm giving notes only for how near the sound is to the real sound, and it is. These cars sound this way. I suppose that these cars sound also this way when you are sitting inside of the car. So for the sound I give it 5 years out of 5. The driving feeling, oh, these are prima donnas, but if you watch the videos you will see that the Formula E drivers have nearly the same problems, so the driving feeling is quite realistic. What is not realistic is that you cannot set up the regeneration. This is something that is sadly missing, and I don't like that the attack mode is missing. This DLC is missing a couple of things. Based only on the driving feeling I would give it 5 wheels, but there is something lacking, so I'm gonna give it 3 wheels. Coming back to my question of the beginning, is it worth €5? All in all, this package is not perfect, but is quite good, and if you like Formula E, or if you are interested in Formula E and in driving these cars, it's worth a €5. If you buy this DLC, be sure to check Errol Prefett's workshop, as he and Garrett Gibson have published 13 tracks for different E-Pre's. That way you can really race the way that Formula E is meant to be raced. On narrow street tracks, difficult to drive. And while they don't look completely right on VR, they help a lot in the immersion of driving an E-Pre. That would be all for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, applaud by clicking on thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to become part of the family and to be informed about new videos. And until next time, safe fuel, collect pickup, and we'll see each other at the podium.
Visit romrom.net to connect to fellow sim racers and sim racing fans.